there were political statements from rappers like Public Enemy.
Our freedom of speech is freedom of thought. We got to fight the powers that be.
And there were funky dance moves from rapper MC Hammer.
Pick up the hammer.
They all helped shape the history of what the world now calls hip-hop.
Hip-hop is a culture that started among inner-city black youth, and the cornerstones of it were MCing, DJing, graffiti, and breakdancing. It's an expression. Like I said, it was an expression from inner-city youth who didn't have a way to really put forth their ideas and ideology.
Now that legacy has expanded.
Where it was once thought to be a fluke, it has now become commercially viable and viable on other levels artistically.
That's the sound of the police. That's the sound of the beast.
But KRS-One says hip-hop is at a crucial crossroad of losing its identity, which is why he and others have formed the Temple of Hip-Hop Culture, a nonprofit cultural archive and research center. And they're kicking things off with the first ever Hip-Hop Appreciation Week.
I love it because as any form, we have to document our history, knowing where it originated, how it originated.
So if you're a hip-hop head, a music lover, or into black history, here's your chance to find out what the newest revolution in the hip-hop world is all about. For BET Tonight, I'm Annette Gibbs.
Good evening and welcome to BET Tonight. I'm Tavis Smiley. We, of course, are glad that you are with us on this Monday evening. Today starts Hip Hop Appreciation Week, a celebration dedicated to the music, style, and culture of urban America. Joining us momentarily from Atlanta to discuss the importance of hip hop is MC and Fox News Channel correspondent Chuck D. Chuck a little later. Pleased to be joined at the moment by MC KRS-One, who established the Temple of Hip Hop, an organization that promotes hip hop culture. Also joined tonight by Professor Z, also with the Temple of Hip Hop. And pleased to be joined by our friend, Vibe President and CEO, Keith Klingscales. And on the phone from California, a big lineup. How would one define the hip-hop culture?
Well, first of all, start off first and foremost, hip-hop culture is, or should I say hip-hop, is the name of our collective consciousness. We're not just doing our collective consciousness, we are our collective consciousness. That's hip-hop culture. It's the expression of our collective consciousness. We express it as MCing, DJing, breaking, graffiti art.
Why does one need, and we're going to talk more about this later in the show because you know there are some watching tonight who think this is a wasted week to be celebrating hip-hop culture, but why do you, in your mind at least, does one need to celebrate hip-hop culture by establishing a week to appreciate it? Why do this?
Well, because you have a lot of depreciation weeks for hip-hop, actually all through the year. At least one time we have to come together, not only as a culture, an international culture amongst ourselves, but to show the rest of the world as well that we're raising our self-worth. This is the point of recognizing Hip-Hop Appreciation Week. All hip-hoppers should really and seriously look at their role and responsibility in society as a hip-hopper.
I'm glad you said that because it makes for a good segue. Let me ask you then whether or not it is other cultures that are responsible for the demeaning and disrespect with which hip-hop is treated, or in fact, do we blame those who are a part of this hip-hop culture for that disrespect and that demonization?
Well, actually, it's development. No one is really to blame. We're just immature, really. Hip-hop is only 27 years old. Started in 1970 with a guy named DJ Kool Herc. From now, we've now grown up. We're at a point now where we know ourselves. And from this moment on, looking at the year 2000 and then moving forward, hip-hop is mature now. And we're saying that we're taking responsibility for what we do and how we express ourselves. No longer can someone tell us who we are and what we're supposed to be doing. So the demonization or the demonizing or criminalizing of hip-hop altogether is just adolescence. It's just really a childish way of looking at the culture and the culture looking at itself.
I got to go to Cheryl Martin for a news update, but when we come back, Keith, I want to come to you first. You heard someone in the package earlier say that rap has become, hip-hop certainly, has become commercially viable. As the head of a major magazine about the culture, I want to ask you whether or not hip-hop has become too commercially viable. We'll talk about that with Keith. And our other guest will join in our conversation. And more importantly, we'll get to your phone calls, I promise you, in just a moment after we check in with our friend Cheryl Martin to get a brief look at tonight's top news headlines. BET Tonight, I'm Tavis Smiley. We are talking tonight about Hip Hop Appreciation Week and the Temple of Hip Hop with its founder, KRS-One. Also pleased to be joined tonight by hip hop educator, Professor Z, and our friend Vibe President and CEO, Keith Cleanscales. And on the phone, joined tonight by MC Kurupt from Los Angeles. Kurupt, you there?
Yo, yo.
All right, just checking to make sure. Sold out, if I that way.
No, I wouldn't even go there. I think what happens, hip-hop is winning right now. Hip-hop is winning in a big way. And it's funny when people of color start to win, questions start to get asked, big questions start to get asked. And it's not winning in a small way. I mean, hip-hop in many ways is propelling a number of major music companies. It's helping keep a number of video networks and things like that really moving along. What it's doing for fashion, culture, and style is just incredible. So with that, you know, with all that success comes some downsides, and comes some detractors. I think one of the things that I've learned from Quincy Jones is to make sure you know, be cognizant of history, be cognizant of how, you know, how things have come to pass. And I think it's important for something like this Hip Hop Appreciation Week to you know, to take a moment and you know, okay, you see all the success, you see the $1 million videos, you see all the things that are happening, but where did this come from? How did we get here? And what steps have been taken? And this is a moment to reflect. And then, quite intelligently, you know, KRS and the people he's worked with came up and started working from the very fundamentals of hip-hop. Let's bring this all the way back, sort of a rewind, so to speak, right back to the beginning, and then sort of take it from there. And there's a lot of kids out there who love hip-hop who don't know some of these things, and that's so important.
Speaking of kids, Z, there are a lot of people who think and who argue that hip-hop has, in fact, become too commercial, too corporate. They make that argument, as you well know, because it has crossed over so tremendously with kids who don't look like you and I, you and me. Right. How do you respond to folks who think, you know, I asked you the same question I asked Keith, basically. There's some folks who believe that it's sold out, and they believe it's sold out because, in fact, it's crossed over. Your thoughts?
I think some people really didn't know how to look at hip-hop. Hip-hop is an international phenomenon. It has a base that goes back as far as African history, with the original graffiti artists drawing on the mountains and in the caves 40,000 years ago, and the Jele and Jele farmers, commonly known as griots, telling the stories to kings and queens without getting their head taken off. These were the original MCs. And once people can begin to see what contributed to the original basis of hip-hop, then when today hip-hop expands to many of various national cultures, they'll be able to accept it, that just like African culture, as it flowered and became a human culture, so too does hip-hop, which in fact is just the underground expression for justice and righteousness and the development of health, wealth, and self-awareness, which leads to lyrics, for instance, today of, which some people may say are too commercial, but like this money, power, and respect kind of music. This is a very conscious expression. I have 2 MAs, I'm working on a doctorate. I've been to many of the universities in the country, and the one thing I've learned out of all of these years and all of these universities, that the message they're really trying to impart is money, power, and respect are the keys to life. Hip-hoppers are hearing it in one day. So if this phenomena speaks the truth and therefore is international, there's no problem with that in terms of the way we see it.
Kurupt, with all due respect to what our friend Z just had to say, there are a lot of folk who balance, and they're right now watching, no doubt, who think, as I said earlier, this is just a wasted week. Kurupt?
Well, you know, one thing and the most important thing, like me, you know, the most powerful educational words that I've ever heard spoken on it was from Andre Harrell during the show. He basically stated about the affirmative action artists and the Reaganomics artists. You know, back in the days, you had after-school programs, you had all kinds of things that took kids off the streets and had kids looking at so many different positive situations when their idols was Dr. J and Wilt Chamberlain and people like this. When as soon as Reaganomics kicked in and took away all the after-school programs and things, you know, the kids grew up to a whole different light of what an idol is. Their idol became the person that they saw every day on the streets that was getting money. And their idols became people who they seen surviving gunfire and things like that. So, I mean, you know, hip-hop has been through so many different things. For people to think this was a wasted week, you know, with the fact that, you know, so many black kids are involved in this here culture. This has made so many jobs for people who by this time probably would either be dead, locked up, or destroyed in their brains. So, you know, everybody has their opinions, but one thing we must realize is that this here is the voice of the youth.
Okay.
And it has always been the voice of the youth.
Chris,
so how could it be a wasted week when it's something for our youthful audiences?
Okay.
I think it's dangerous to, you know, speak about, well, is hip-hop crossing over? You have to really look at the audience. See, a lot of that audience, you know, hip-hop didn't cross over. That audience walked across that cultural divide and came to find hip-hop.
Exactly.
You know, hip-hop comes in the voice that it's been. It's remained in that voice and it stays strong in that voice.
But Keith, but who are, not to cut you off here, but I just did. Sorry about that.
Bring it.
I buy your argument that they walked across this way as opposed to hip-hop going the other way. I understand your argument. But that raises the question, I think. It begs the question as to who those of you in this hip-hop culture now are servicing. Who are you? Are you still servicing the same black kids, the same black community that you started out servicing?
I think hip-hop is showing an amazing balance. I mean, you have things that go on that do, you know, artists that can do some of the most commercial things, and then the next week they can go to a club and they can rock a party just the old school style, just, you know, just a mic in the crowd, and they can get off and do some things. This man right here has done some things on, you know, you've seen him on national television stations, you've seen him in battles with Sprite and everything else like that, but you know, you can also see him go down to the original roots of hip-hop. So it is an unfair burden to place on an artist or on hip-hop that you cannot be successful and you can't be real. That's something they try to tell you. That's not the case.
Okay, speaking of an unfair burden, KRS, let me ask you this. There are a lot of folk who will give you a pass when you talk about, as Corrupt did a moment ago, Reaganomics, conservative politicians, the system, the man, et cetera, et cetera. They'll give you a pass when you talk about that. Let's face it, we are, in fact, demonized every day in a lot of ways by those outside of our community.
Sure.
But people oftentimes, I shouldn't say oftentimes, people seem to never hear those who are in the hip-hop culture take responsibility for the role that they play. You know, I'm with you on what they are doing to us, but what are we doing to us? Why don't people in the hip-hop culture step up and say that we do have a role? There is a responsibility that we have to represent ourselves better.
Well, first of all, we're doing that right now. Right this second. Hip-hop is in full maturity right now. We are saying to you and to the world, or actually to the country right now, we are taking responsibility for our actions. Many mayors of major cities are taking actually taking credit for what hip-hop is doing in their city. Oh, the crime rate is low. First they said we were the cause for the crime. So if the crime rate is low, aren't we the ones that are getting our act together, or were you lying in the beginning? So the true questions begin to come out when, I mean, just look at the newscast that we just heard as we waited here. I mean, 3 youths probably listening to the local radio station into hip-hop, pulled over by police officers, and this kind of stupidity happens on the New Jersey Turnpike. This is what hip-hop is dealing with. Even as we try to get ourselves together, we're only looking for health, wealth, and self-awareness. Now, as we seek that out, we have to deal with poor education, no jobs, racism, sexism, this, that, and the other. The true question is, where is the organization?
We are just getting started. I have to take a break, though, at this moment, unfortunately, but we'll come back in a couple of minutes and continue our conversation and get to your phone calls in just a moment. You are watching BET Tonight on Black Entertainment Television, and we're back in just a moment.
Is the father, the son, is the center of the earth, in the middle of the universe. Then why is this verse coming 6 times rehearsed? Don't freestyle much, but I write them like such. Amongst the fiends controlled by the screens, what does it all mean, all this I'm seeing?
Welcome back to BET Tonight. We are back talking about the hip-hop culture, and this being the first day of Hip-Hop Appreciation Week, first time ever. I suspect this will become an annual event, knowing KRS-One. We go to Wanda in West Virginia. Wanda, thanks for holding you on the air.
Hello, how you doing?
Well, how are you?
Good. I think Hip-Hop Appreciation Day week is super. I love you, Chris Parker. Okay, what I want to say is that hip-hop artists continue to develop, and it's still moving upward, in spite of the controversy that the media or whoever may have put on it. And keeping that in mind, I want us to realize that hip-hop is just becoming adults.
Okay.
And we have to remember that a part of maturing is making mistakes. That's why they put erasers on pencils. And that's where Appreciation Week shows that with anything you put forward an effort, that it will show a great deal.
Wanda in West Virginia dropping knowledge on BET tonight. Let me ask you whether you guys agree with her assessment that hip-hop is, in fact, on the incline and not on the decline, as some think.
Well, of course it's on the incline. We're still here. People tend to...
But you admit, though, you can be somewhere and not necessarily be moving up.
Well, yeah, but see, that's not our case.
Right.
We are moving up, out, we're broadening. If anywhere in the world we are to see Dr. Martin Luther King's dream fulfilled, it's in hip-hop. Look around. Just take a look around the whole society. Anywhere you see young black youth, young white youth, Asian youth, Native Americans, Chicano, Mexican, Latino community on a whole, all coming together under one cause, one culture, one vibe. That's hip-hop. I don't see that nowhere else in the world.
Okay. You know, in line with that also, and the caller was right on point, appreciation is not only we like you this week, hip-hop, but it's we're raising the value of those who are hip-hoppers, and hip-hop itself has raised the value of social consciousness inside of America. Us being right here in D.C., we can't pass by hip-hop, we can't pass hip-hop's recognition and its contribution to political events inside of this country. Besides keeping that underground alive, all of these folks that ran for president of the country, even up to Dole, is using hip-hop today. They can't ignore the force of hip-hop, and if they want to reach the people, they have to understand hip-hop. And this is a message also to parents during this week. If you want to be able to have more impact with your children, then you better appreciate hip-hop, because your kids is on they're into hip-hop. If you want to know them and you want to reach them, you need to hear hip-hop also.
And you want to know what else? The growth of hip-hop has grown faster than any music that there is. I mean, within less than a quick little matter of time, if you were to judge record sales, we have went from selling almost 20 records to 20 million. So, you know, just like what the brother said right there, man, you know, the kids is into hip-hop, you know? Right. So really, people really need to look at it. I mean, on the phone right now, you have two separate MCs, two separate areas, two separate eras. Chris, when he came out, you know, during his time, he was a part of that rap age. Me, when I came out during my time, I was a part of mine. And if you really look at it, them are two separate eras. You understand what I'm saying? So, I mean, it's about time for something dedicated towards this thing that the youth is so infatuated with, especially the simple fact that it's people like Chris and legendary figures like Chris and that Fashioneer. These are people that really need to speak out, because these are the cats that control the cats of my generation, the youth. You understand what I'm saying?
Sure.
And we are the cats that really affect the Reaganomics artists of nowadays, which are the kids on the streets who's steadily on the streets and steadily on the corners. You understand what I'm saying?
Crow, let me jump in and ask you. You said something that makes me want to ask Chris something. Chris, I'm wondering whether or not, don't slap me if I say this, but he called you legendary. That makes you sound real old. But certainly as one of the originators, you've been around for quite a while. I'm wondering whether or not you think that today's hip-hoppers, those getting in the business today, don't appreciate the culture the way that you and others who started when you did appreciate the culture.
You know, I think they do. I think the youth today have more of appreciation for hip-hop than we had. As a matter of fact, a lot of hip-hop's disorganization is created by our own carelessness around the years 1983 to 1990. When we came out, right around the 90s, right around when Tone Loc came out, shout out to Tone Loc, of course, and Young MC, the shift of hip-hop went from cultural to corporate. Not so much that Tone Loc had much to do with it, but the general mood of the culture was like,
sales.
You know, just, right, actually, we couldn't even stop it.
Well, it was balance that was lost, because the corporate and the culture can work together, but for all of those who intend really to get involved in commerce with hip-hop, they should know that they should use their culture as a condom before they have intercourse with commerce.
Very important point. Very important. Balance is the key. That's the key, you know, balance. That's really the point. And also, that's also the theme of the week itself. balance. Don't criticize and say, oh, this one's music is terrible, that one's music is good, this one is this one is that, because your interpretations might not, I don't say are, but they might not be all that accurate when judged by the eyes of your children. If you want to get into your children, this is the week. Sit them down, explain to them, man, when I was a hip hopper, and they'll be, wow, Dad, Mom, you was actually into this culture? Sure I was. I was down with Flash and them. I was down with the Fearless 4 and Treacherous 3 and Cold Crush. And then make the youth see the connection. And then when they talk to parents about that, take it back to grandparents, great-grandparents, all the way back to whatever your culture, wherever your culture originated, because all cultures have some form of hip-hop in them from their origination.
I am obliged to take another corrupt standby. I got to take a break here. We'll come back and continue our conversation with our esteemed panel of hip-hoppers on BET Tonight. We're back after these messages. Stay where you are. I'm glad that you are with us as we continue our conversation tonight here on BET Tonight about hip-hop culture, this being the first day of the very first ever Hip-Hop Appreciation Week, founded by that brilliant philosopher, KRS-One. We go to Lawrence in Maryland. Lawrence, thanks for holding. You're on the air, and I'm glad you called.
Yeah, what's up? First off, I just wanted to say what's up to Chris. Yo, I give you much props, and to Corrupt, you know, you anticipated on the street, man. For real. To Professor Z, hey, I liked your comment. Chris, I just wanted to ask you, a week for hip-hop appreciation? Come on, I mean, we looking at a culture. You know, we looking at, you know, we started a whole way of life.
True indeed.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, when I was coming out, I was banging, you know, Cold Crush and Fearless. You know, I mean, a week. What do you feel about that? I mean,
well, actually, it's an excellent question. We start off with a week because we want to start small. Keep here we are, Tavis Smiley, so we want to start small.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that.
You know, but
I know I'm not the Today Show, but man, come on.
I mean, this we were looking to start very small. We wanted a concentrated effort to start out. So we started with a week. Hopefully, the entire month of May will become Hip Hop Month, just like Black History Month. But we start off with a week, and those that can get involved in the week will then, you know, stretch it out and so on and so on. But you're absolutely right. Right, a week is too short for a culture that goes back to the eons of time. But we have to start somewhere.
And that week is important. It starts right around Malcolm X's birthday, May 18th, or May 19th.
Just briefly, go into the importance of why we chose that.
The week has much spiritual significance for hip-hop as an underground expression. If you look at the point of Malcolm X, his birthday's on the 19th, but the 18th is where we started to try to encase a whole week, and ends right at that celebration of African Liberation Day, which is important for D.C. because this is where that really blew up with Kwame Ture and all of that, the All African People's Revolutionary Party.
That's right.
All of that stuff is important. So you see, for hip-hop, this is hip-hop's week to get live all over the globe. And so it's only 1 week, but we're moving next, you know, eventually we'll have a month, and then we'll have 52 weeks of appreciation of hip-hop a year.
So the week wasn't arbitrarily chosen?
No. We actually, let us also not forget Biggie. His birthday is the 21st of this week as well.
Candace in Toronto, I thank you for calling. You on BET Tonight.
Hello. Thank you for taking my call. I'm sitting here and I'm looking at your distinguished panel, and I would like to know exactly why is it that there is, first of all, no female representation on the panel, considering that female make up a considerable amount of the rappers that we see today. And also, in accordance with your comments that are being stated about the hip-hop culture in the beginning and so on and so forth, I don't hear you mentioning anybody from the Latino race or any of the contributions that the Latinos made, and I find it very disturbing. Can you explain why?
Two very good questions.
Yes, absolutely. Actually, let's just open it up to the panel. First of all, the idea on the female involvement, we're just at a loss. Keep in mind that this is a struggle as well as something, I mean, BET has embraced this, Tavis, we thank you greatly, but keep in mind that, you know, the people you see here today, Keith, myself, Z, so on, these are the first soldiers, these are the first people that are down with us. It's not necessarily our choice to be here all as men, but we're all friends, and we all came to actually discuss the week. Now, of course, hip-hop can't move forward without the mother concept. And this gives me a perfect opportunity to go into that. Yes. Let us reflect briefly, and the caller actually summed it up. We really don't have to go after that, but let us not forget that hip-hop was nurtured and created by the single mother and child. This is a mythology that goes back to the beginning of time. The Madonna and child always giving birth to new thought, new philosophy and culture and so on. Hip-hop comes straight out of that tradition, the goddess and the child. And so we give mad respect to not only femininity, but also we raise femininity up to the level of God. Right. And question, why is God just a man? Hip-hop recognizes the single woman nurturing us and taking care of us.
Keith, Chris was basically talking in some regard about the changing nature of hip-hop, the changing demographic of the hip-hop audience. We talked about this a little bit earlier. I'm wondering whether or not you think, I loved your analogy earlier about the fact that hip-hop didn't change, but those outside of the community came to hip-hop as opposed to hip-hop going to them and changing itself. But I'm wondering whether or not you think that reality, that fundamental reality, dilutes what hip-hop is.
I think it's an opportunity, and to go right back to the caller mentioned what about the Latino community. There's an artist now, Big Pun, who for a long time was, bubbling under, did a lot of work on a lot of different things. People knew about him. He was on, different mixtapes, Tony Touch, all this different stuff like that. And here he comes right now, proudly representing the Latino community, but his work is just banging, And you have a lot of guys like that, guys like DMX, guys like Cannabis that do work underneath. Corrupt, who's on the line right now. He laid in the cut lovely for a long time, and when he dropped his joint, it was huge. So I think if you look at the examples of brothers that have done this thing, and sisters that, Lil' Kim, that, show up on these albums, they get their name out there, and, hip-hop probably has the best protege system in all of commercial entertainment,
Also with the Hispanic community and Latino community, you must also majorly give it up for Fat Joe.
No doubt.
Because he came in, man, and smashed the game, and he's the one that opened the doors for the Big Puns. And the other artists situated like that, situated with the East Coast and all of that. You also got to remember Kid Frost. He came in with his version of Latino and Hispanic views from the California area. So it's been pushed in there. A gang of
that's where it's going.
They're doing their things, and we're all in one support. Hip hop, man, we're all one family, and it starts with one major character stepping up and putting his foot down, and that's why you must take your hat off to Chris, because Chris has been shouting this for years.
Candace in Toronto, I thank you for your phone call. As you can tell, you touched a nerve here on our show, and I'm glad you called in Canada. Omega in Maryland, I thank you for holding. You're on BET tonight.
Greetings to the panel. I would like to thank KRS-One for inviting my family, the Rites of Passage Collective, to his Temple of Hip Hop show in early January, was it?
Yes.
Yes. You opened so many doors for us. A lot of people don't understand. Hip-hop is universal. It's not about Latino and black. It's a universal thing. Hurricane G is doing her thing. Thank you for paving the way, Professor. It's beautiful. I can see y'all, creating this week for us, because we're going to keep it live for all of y'all. I would like to know the curriculum right now. Is that, being built upon?
Good question.
Sure.
Just a little bit about it. We don't have enough time to get into all the details, but our curriculum deals with how to improve health, wealth, and self-awareness of all inner-city youth and general populations. But that's the main guide of our curriculum, and we're starting off with an archive and a research team prior to bringing students in. But by 1999, near the end of 1999, we intend to actually hold regular classes.
Maisha in Texas, I can give you about 15 or 20 seconds if you go to it right quick for me.
Yeah, I wanted to know how these brothers are referring to hip-hop as a culture, and I wanted to know what their perspective on the life-sustaining rituals of this culture, first of all. And secondly, also, one of the 4 functions of folklore says that folklore doesn't change anything. And I'm saying, I think that hip-hop is important, it's entertaining, it reflects our orality and our culture, but it doesn't really change anything. I want to hear the panel's thoughts on that.
I've got 1 minute left, and Chris, I want to give it to you to respond to that as quickly as you can and whatever else you want to put out there.
Sure. Well, in 1 minute, let me say that the purpose of Hip Hop Appreciation Week, as well as the purpose of hip-hop, period, is to raise one's self-value and raise one's self-worth. When you talk about hip-hop not changing anything or changing something, you really got to look at what's already happened. We've already changed the world. What we're doing now is appreciating the change that we've just done.
And what are you asking folks to do during this week of appreciation? I see the ribbons you got on.
Yes, of course. Throw on a silver ribbon. It signifies self, intelligence, love, vision, evolution, and revolution. We feel that if our youth concentrate on this, that they'll change their character and improve their lives altogether.
Exactly.
I may make it in the history books after all. Hip Hop Appreciation Week started on BET tonight with Tavis Smiley. And I'm glad that our panel took the time to come talk to us tonight. I'm glad that you have been here so far in our program. We will continue with more of BET tonight in just a moment. I thank the panel for being here, and we are back in just a moment, so stay there.